Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Tweedle Eat Tweedle Run podcast, where Steph and I document our Run Disney adventures at both Disney World and Disneyland parks. I'm Court, and this is Steph.
Hello, and as always, you can interact with us on at Instagram Tweedle Eat Tweedle Run, or reach out to us by email at tweedleeattweedlerun@gmail.com. We are also on YouTube, where you can watch our smiley faces, and if you like us, hit the like button and subscribe. Or you can find us on Spotify and Amazon Music. Look for Tweedle Eat and Tweedle Run. On today's episode, we're going to follow up a little bit about on what we've been doing for the last couple weeks, and if we got those coveted Princess Race bibs, because that was an adventure in itself, let me tell you.
Yes, are they
So
are they all sold out now, Steph? Are there any races that are still open that you've seen?
the Princess Race is completely sold out.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do the Disneyland half, so Dumbo's Double Dare, it is never sold out. It has been sitting there because essentially everybody complained about how terrible it was last year because they are
Uh,
running off course or
mhm.
off out of the parks. They did release the courses for the Halloween, which you and I looked at this week,
Yeah.
and the half is mostly off-site. It You run through the parks at the beginning, and then for this, I would say most of the second half of the half, you're off course.
Yeah,
But
you're
you
just in
do get
like
to
this, you're in the streets of Anaheim, basically.
you're in the
Yeah.
streets of Anaheim, but you do get to run through the stadium where the Anaheim Angels play.
Oh, did they change
So
that? Because the last half, I guess, they changed it so you didn't run through the stadium, and that was one of people's complaints
yeah,
because at least before you did. So that's awesome that you
so
get to do that again.
so it is. It's back to the stadium. I think there's a medic station and a water station through it as well. So yeah, you get to run through that. But I have to say, looking at the maps for it, the 5K and the 10K look better than most of the Walt Disney World races because so much of those races you're not running through anything.
No, exactly. Like when we do the 10Ks, I mean, you get to go through Epcot and Hollywood Studios, but not for very long. I'd say
No.
at least half of the race, you're just basically running on the roads and on ramps and off ramps from their various roadways. So yeah, this one I agree. The 5K, also this I found interesting, which was different than Disney World. The 5K starts and ends in the parks,
I
which I'm
know,
like,
that's
how are
exciting.
they gonna get us out? Like, you gotta like at least because with the races we've done in Disney World, you start in the parking lot, you end in the parking lot. So it's kind of like you're never like left in the parks. So that's interesting. I kind of like it.
Does that mean there's going to be a bunch of stowaways that just hang out
I don't
after the
know. That's what
5K?
I know. That's what I was, but I'm assuming they have like gates. And the other thing that
Sure.
I'm curious what it will look like is that when you look at the map, um, it shows like the route just going through like green area. So I'm like, so they must have like, I don't know, service type roads for
I think
Disneyland that you
so.
run along. But I'm like, it's weird because they're not roadways like they
No,
are on the
because
park
I
map.
have the when we were at Disneyland last year, I ran around the park. Like I did a whole circumference of Disneyland and DCA. And because if you do that, if you do like a straight just circumference of the two properties, it's like 6.5 kilometers or something. So a lot of it I could see like from behind, kind of like a behind look at what a lot of the park stuff looks like. But based on their maps, like none of the roads that we're running on for the same roads that I ran when I did that route. So
Yeah, yeah.
it'll be
So that'll be
interesting to see.
cool because I think we're really going to get to go a little bit more backstage. Like you do a little bit in Hall or in Epcot, right?
Yeah.
Like but not a ton. Like it's kind of like you might go out a back door, but then you're pretty much basically out onto a roadway. So there's not a ton of that sort of backlot running. So yeah, the 5K looks awesome. I'm really excited you snagged that bib for me.
I know. I felt so good when I did it. It was like, click. Yes. I
So
figured out all the tricks. But it's
so
been wild. Like,
speaking of bibs,
yes.
Steph.
Speaking of bibs, let's get on to the princess race bib. So I had my brother and Marie all set up in a nice little chat with Court and I so that we could communicate as to who was getting what bib. And it was a bit of a race to see who could log on. So because I use Telegram, I get notifications as soon as a race opens. And I was sitting in a car driving with our friends, and I was just refreshing my phone anyway. So I saw right away when a race opened. I got on, I messaged everybody in the chat. My brother got on, and then I got to drive in the parent car while this was all happening as we were driving through the wilds of Nova Scotia. So we were just following the other vehicle that was in our little caravan for the road trip that we were on. And so I got to use the other phone. So I had two phones going, trying to see which would be faster. And I logged in probably 10 minutes earlier on my phone than I did on my friend's phone. But my friend's phone would have been the winner because had my brother not have pulled through and managed to get everything in and everything lined up quickly, I probably would have been able to have gotten the races. I managed to have a signal. My friend's phone got in, I think, just as my brother finished signing Court and I up for the 5K, the 10K, and the challenge. So everything is all set nice and neat. I probably would have been able to do it because the whole time that this is happening, Court had no signal whatsoever in Newfoundland. She had no
Yeah,
idea that
so
any of this was
so
happening.
Marie got in too, but she had like I saw in the chat. Yeah, so as Steph said, so I had a little bit of connectivity. We had stopped somewhere to have lunch right as it was kind of opening. So I joined the queue. It said my time was more than an hour. I was kind of messaging, and then we were heading out and we were going to go to this boat tour. And then I had no signal
Yeah.
whatsoever, like literally like X, like nothing. So then I was just like, well, good luck to them. I don't, well, I guess I'll find out, and I didn't until we did our boat tour and then we drove like 3 more hours to like where we were staying. And then I got on Wi-Fi. That's like I didn't know anything going on. So I was like, well, I guess I'll find out if stuff happened. But I know Marie was it like same thing, logged in, like so everyone sort of logged in, it sounds like around the same time.
Yeah.
Justin had the lowest wait time and ended up, I think he pretty much had everyone registered before even you had gotten in, or had you gotten
Yeah, like
in?
I was
Yeah.
just getting like I was scared to actually click to go in that it would like mess because he was using my login.
Right.
So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if he's logged in and he's doing this, I don't actually want to log in case for some reason it messes it up and like he gets logged out. But he had like the document that I made that had all my information, all of your information, plus my credit card number. So he just had to like put it all in. Plus I called him. So I was talking to him on the phone and walking him through it as he was like filling it all in. So
Yeah, so he ended up getting, so you did the challenge, but then you had to buy the 5K separate because it wasn't included in the challenge. And
correct.
then he was also able to sign me up for the 10K, but somehow signed me up as Courtney, first
Yes.
name and
I
last name.
I don't know. Well, you were Courtney Benvenuti.
Oh, okay, all right. So first,
Yeah,
middle.
so first, middle, last, and I was like, well, how did this happen? So then all the
Yeah.
rest of the information is correct. I emailed Run Disney again to see if they could merge it over to you, but I had nothing yet. But it was also the weekend, so who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but we got in just as like we were just stopping for lunch, and it was like it all happened in like this magical moment where I got it all done. We parked, and it was like, okay, we got in and I didn't have to think about it anymore because it was definitely the worst part, just sitting in the car, just waiting and waiting and waiting. Because even then, by the time I think we finished lunch, I think the 5K and the 10K had sold out
Yeah. Well, I mean,
in
they're
that
they're
time
always
period.
the fastest ones to
Yeah,
sell out.
but
I mean, and we'll see because it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like if we're going to see the same thing we saw with the other races where the charity bibs, if there'll be that sort of massive dump
yeah.
of additional race bibs when that
Well, and
happens.
I would even say, I don't know what's going on right now. Maybe a bunch of charity dumps are happening, but even in the last 2 weeks, like Telegram has been going crazy with a bunch of races becoming available. Even the princess race, like the next day, I had like a 5K pop up, a 10K pop up, a challenge pop up, like consecutively over the course of like the couple days after we got in. That
Hmm.
had for some reason we missed out the first time, I probably would have been fast enough to catch it another time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So yeah. So yay. We
yay.
we got all our races, and it's funny because so when I got in, because Marie, who had messaged me too, right, and was like, oh, okay, Looks like Justin like got you into the 10K. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, great. Um, but a bit of a surprise for Steph is that my husband was not lying to you, and
Oh,
I wanted to surprise you on our podcast, but Marie did sign me up for the half because I've lost my mind and am now doing a 10K and a half, which I was like, I didn't really plan to do both of them, but I'm
so
not
then
doing the challenge, Steph, because I've signed up for them separately.
no, but you
I've
can fix that. You
well,
can
so
fix that.
I'm gonna email them and see if they can change it, but it's like $25 cheaper if you pay for them separately, apparently. So
But then you
I
don't
assume the
get the
cost of the
challenge
medal.
medal.
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to like email Run Disney, but I'm like, yeah. When I told Marie to sign me up for the half to surprise Steph, I didn't really think through the fact that like she would have Justin still try and get me into the 10K.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I figured you would want to because it goes to the castle.
That's why. And you know what? I already regret my decision. I went for like a 6K run yesterday and was like, I have to do that 2.5 more times? Oh, this is the worst.
Well, that's like I ran 23.5 kilometers today like a dummy.
And you're like, I got to do that double when you do the
Do
marathon.
the
Like,
marathon.
yeah. So, anyway, so surprise stuff. So, I am going to run
Yay!
the half with you for the princess and apparently the 10K. And hopefully, I can finagle my way into getting a challenge medal with Run Disney. I figured they come out with, because they do this drop of bibs like every so often. I figure I'll just email them and say, hey, here's sort of what happened. You know, can I just switch into the challenge? Because I know they obviously limit the number of challenge bibs, but I'll see if they can
There there is a
open
way
it
to
up.
do it because once we get your 10K added to you, you can click on it and you can change your registration. There's like a
Oh,
button
okay.
to do that. Hmm.
Oh, I already put in my proof of time for my half marathon, so
There you go.
I used my springtime surprise
Well,
because
that's what
my
I use
well,
too.
yeah, because my our time is low enough that it would sort of like calculate out to be lower than the like I think it's 2.5 hours for the half if
Yeah,
you don't want to put in a proof of time, or you have to put a proof of time to be under 2.5 hours. I was like, well, I would definitely have a goal of running it at least like excluding stops to be under 2.5 hours. Now, like if we want to do a bunch of stops and take pictures in front of the castle and stuff, sure, it might end up being longer, but
sure.
actual running pace would be probably just over 2 hours, but I don't know, we'll see. Or I run 10K and walk 10K. I don't know. I'm just like, whatever, I'll finish it. But
Well, yeah, that's the same. That's kind of how I'm starting to think about how I'm going to approach the whole marathon because it was whether I was going to be under 5.5 hours or over 5.5 hours. And I'm like, I think I will finish it under 5.5 hours, even if I walk half of it.
yeah. Yeah, well, like
So,
when I did that terrible how far did I go? 10K, 11K. When I did that run that I'd posted about on our Instagram and it was so terrible, my pace was still, even with walking like a couple of the kilometers, I think my pace was still something like 620 per kilometer or
yeah,
something. Like it still wasn't like that slow that I would have been like kind of more than the 2.5 hours. So, anyways,
sure.
whatever. We'll see. It's happening. I've signed up for it.
Yay!
Uh,
We're gonna be so
and then
fit through the winter.
But here's the problem, Steph. So then, of course, then my brain is like, well, so then maybe for springtime surprise, you just do the whole challenge because, like, like
Why
I'll
not?
run more kilometers at Princess by doing a 10 and a half than I will at springtime surprise if I did the 5, the 10, and the 10 mile.
It's so
This
fun.
is this is the problem, is this is what your brain does, and it's it's not logical.
See, meanwhile, I'm running in reverse now that I've signed up for the dopey, and I'm like, what were you thinking, you dummy?
Yeah. But then think about how easy the princess is going to feel. You're like,
Oh,
I
I
don't have to
know.
run a marathon on the fourth day.
Yeah.
But you know what I was thinking too is I was like, okay, well, I'll be training for the half, which is like a month later. So I was like, okay, well, maybe when you go to run the marathon, I'll just go out and do like a run on my own and do like a half. And so then we'll both kind of be dead when we go to the spa.
Okay, because this is also what Dan said to me, and I was like, "What are you talking about, you crazy man? I don't understand
Yeah.
anything."
Yeah, so my husband went to see Steph for physio, and of course he knew. I was like talking to him, and I'm saying like, oh, I got oh, it's apparently I've signed up to run a half marathon and I'm doing the 10K too. So I was kind of just like complaining, not complaining, but like, what did I do? I'm a dummy sort of conversation with him when we were on vacation. And of course, I didn't even think to say, hey,
By the
don't tell
way.
Steph. Like it just never even. And so he goes to physio to see Steph and I guess says like, oh yeah, I heard Court's doing the half marathon. So of course, Steph messaged me right away. Is like, your husband says you're doing the half. And I'm like, he crazy. He don't know what he's talking about. It's like all those people who congratulated us for running a marathon when we did a 5K.
I know.
No, he was correct. That's what I'm doing. He came home. I was like, that was a secret. He's like, I didn't know.
Well, and he was like, "Well, you would know better anyway, so I don't know." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, I am usually the keeper of the bibs, so
You are. I know. So it's funny because I can see one registration in my account because Marie logged into my account to sign me up, right? Like similar
yeah.
how Justin did for you. So like I do have one registration in there. So just waiting for
I
the other
mean,
one to show up.
and your other registration is correct now because now you're not Courtney anymore. So
You know, that's exciting. And I called Run Disney and I got them to fix my birthday, which was wrong. And so I think that was what was causing all the issues because all my race bibs obviously have my correct birthday. And then for some reason, my Disney account had the wrong birthday. I don't know what I did when I set that up, but so they fixed that. So now I think that will stop, hopefully, all the issues with having multiple accounts. That was just kind of annoying. So I'll be in
yeah.
one spot, all the races.
Yay!
Yay. So anyway, so we're back from vacation. We both had our East Coast trips, so thought we'd give you just a little highlight of what we loved, if there's anything we didn't love, top things to do or see, and we'll just kind of run through them. And maybe
Sure.
Steph, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So to recap, I traveled with my family and another family to Ottawa, Quebec City, New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, and down through the US to through Maine and Vermont before coming home. And I would have to say some of the best parts of the trip were Quebec City was pretty awesome. We spent a lot of time in Old Quebec and walked through. We paid for this like historical scavenger hunt tour thing. I don't know if I would have paid as much as I paid for it because it was like move at your own pace and everything, but it was like very history heavy and like the kids would definitely not be super into it. And for I think it was like $60. So for the price we paid, I wouldn't say it was necessarily worth it. But we ate some pretty good food, had some really good pastries and croissants and like that sort of stuff. So like that was pretty great. The old Quebec is beautiful. Quebec City, period, is beautiful. So I'd like to spend some more time there at some point. It does feel like you're going to Europe, but you're not.
It does.
Um,
It's because it's got that sort of old town vibe with all the old architecture. Yeah, I loved
yeah,
Quebec City. It was great. Dan and I did it just like the two of us for like a kind of long weekend. That was a nice way to experience the city for sure.
totally. So yeah, so that was pretty awesome. And then another really great highlight was visiting our friend Becca in Nova Scotia. Her backyard is literally the Bay of Fundy, and it's
Cool.
pretty unreal. Like you could I'd get up in the morning, go for a run, take a video panning like her backyard where you see the tide, go run for 40 minutes and then come back and then do it again. And the tide would be like a third out from where it was before and dramatically so. But it was great because we could take the kids down and they went on like a little adventure sea hike to like see all the little sea creatures and to watch the tide come in. Like we went when it was absolute lowest tide, and so we could spend lots of time out there and like you could literally see Becca's house from down below. Be like, yeah, see that blue house there?
Oh,
That's
cool.
her house. So it was good, and it was also like really good to spend time with her. So that was really awesome. And then we really had a great time in Vermont. We spent 2 nights in Burlington, Vermont, had a nice little Airbnb downtown, which was like walkable to everything, and it was really great that way. Um, we got to go to the beach there, which was all right. Did some breweries and cideries, ate way too much food, and then spent 2 very nice nights in Stowe, which I realized when we were in Stowe, I hadn't been there for like 25 years since I was like in high school on a snowboarding trip with school.
Oh, cool.
So It was very cool to like go through there in the summer. We stayed at like this really nice little lodge cabin place that was freshly renovated and super adorable in every way. Um, and we took the kids up the mountain on the gondola, so they got to go on the gondola, and I explained that it was kind of like going on the Sky Rider at Disney World. So like they kind of like got that experience, which was pretty cool. Um, all of our accommodations and everything worked out really well, except for one place that we stayed in Bangor, Maine, which was a interesting little hotel that I dubbed the People of Walmart Hotel because of all the characters that kind of
Oh, oh
went
my.
through this place. Yeah, yeah. And so we were traveling with another family, and we had two hotel rooms there. And this place was like right off the interstate, and our goal was cheap and pool. That was it.
Right.
And if they had a restaurant, just because it's easier, and it had all that. So we pulled in. It looked fine. Our room was fine. Our friend's room had a smoky smell, even though all the rooms were non-smoking. So we went to the front, complained about the room, and asked if we could have another room. The guy was great and was like, "Yep, no problem." Got us the key for the other room. We like walked to go check out said room, open the door. Oh, it's not a room. Well, it is a room, but they weren't using it as room. They were using it as storage. There were probably like 5 or 6 giant bags full of linen, and then the whole room was filled with like 6 or 7 mattresses, all like stacked in different ways.
Is
So
is
the guy at
that
the front
is
desk,
that not what you wanted? You weren't looking
no,
for.
no, not really. So we then went back, and my friend didn't want to make a bigger deal out of it. So we figured out how to open the window in their room so they could air it out. And so we let them know that, by the way, this isn't an actual room. You probably want to do something about it. Um, and then they just used that room. And other than that, like our room was fine. The beds were comfortable. Everything was clean and great. So that was all good. But then I
Sorry,
guess
I have to ask, when you were in Bangor, Maine, was there a sign that said the home of Julie the Cat Gaffney? Just curious,
no, no,
because
but
she
I
is from
know it.
Bangor, Maine.
Yeah, no, that
That's a Mighty
was.
Ducks reference for anyone who didn't get it, who was not born in the 80s and lived the Mighty Ducks movies through the 90s.
I think that's the only reason why I know where Bangor, Maine
Yeah.
is from the Mighty Ducks movies.
As soon as you
That
said
and the
it, I'm
movie,
like, Julie the Cat Gaffney's from Bangor, Maine.
yeah, and I think Andre the Seal takes her place kind of in around that area.
Oh,
That
okay. All
that
right.
might be the only reason why I know. But yeah, so that was our little trip. We probably tried to cram in more than we could chew for being like driving through the East Coast over the course of 2 weeks. That we didn't get to do as much in some places as we thought we were going to. Like PEI was great, but we probably could have skipped it based on what we actually did in PEI. Like
Right.
we just spent time at the beach, and we could have done that anywhere else. But that's kind of how
Yeah.
PEI goes. Like it's cute to drive through, and if you're into Anne and all that, then there's that. But I did that as a kid, and I would have been the only one interested on this trip to do it, so we didn't do it again. Um, but it's pretty. But
Did
yeah.
you go to the bakery with the lemon tarts? And did they hold up to the nostalgic hype of 20 years or however long it had been?
So I did go to the bakery with the lemon tarts and the cheesecake tarts, and they were not as big as I remembered them being, but they tasted
Well,
good in terms
you
of
are
nostalgia.
bigger than
I
you
am
were.
I am bigger. Although I don't know if I'm that much bigger. I was like 15
Uh,
the last time I was there. I'm like
all right.
pretty much the same size. Um but they were good. The kids liked the lemon tarts. Everybody liked the lemon tarts better than the cheesecake tarts, which was always how I felt about them. Um
Mhm.
so
Worth it though for the trip down memory lane.
yeah, like it was interesting because there were parts of it I definitely remembered, like walking into the bakery, but it's all renovated now, so like I didn't fully get
Yeah.
it. So, but there were other things that were worth the trip. Like we were actually where we stayed when we were there, and we stayed again in like this cute little hotel inn type thing. We were like maybe 13 kilometers away from the cottage that I went to as a kid. So I was tempted to like drive by, but it's like on a private
Hmm.
road now, and I'm like, well, this would just be weird.
Yeah.
Caravan of people pulling up and being like, "Oh, hey, I just want to check out the cottage," and then like pull away again. But I got to run along the river that like I swam in, which was like kind of cool.
That is cool. And
Yeah.
then my other question was, you were going to do this crab counting or whatever that was not for
Oh,
eating, but
yes.
to count them. I was curious if the kids did it, if they liked it, if it was successful, if Mini Man got his donut or ice cream or
So
whatever you were going to bribe him with.
we did not do it because
No.
we didn't make it. So we booked it.
Yeah.
We booked it and like just based on timing and how things were gonna go, we were not gonna make it. So
Mm.
we missed the window to cancel it, and they were kind of jerks about us canceling
Hmm.
it. So we just ended up being out like a couple $100. So that kind of sucked. But James, who was on the trip with us, found an alternative option for the big kids. It was enough for one adult and the big kids that was like kind of in and around where Becca's house was. So he did that. Well, Becca, Higgy, myself, and his wife Robin, and Miniman were forced to go wine touring. Well,
Oh,
he had the other
you
three
poor
kids.
souls. Oh,
Yeah,
that must have been rough.
yeah.
No fun was had, I'm sure, on that wine tour.
No, no, we definitely the first Saturday we went for lunch, we definitely had no fun when we had the best waiter ever who was super entertaining in every way possible. Sawyer was a little bit lost because he was not used to being all by himself, but he had a great time
Oh,
just
center of
hanging out.
attention.
Yeah,
That's like the best thing when you're a third child is like you never get all the attention because there's always bigs that are taking away some of the attention at least. So
exactly. So, but yeah,
fun.
it was fun. Definitely fun. Definitely tired after coming back. I've been home for a week and I feel still like a little bit in recovery mode from it, but it was good.
Yes, it's funny because our trip felt very different where you said you found you ran or ran out of time and kind of overscheduled. I felt like the opposite. And I was even saying to Dan at one point, because usually when we travel with the kids, we try and stay places for a minimum of 2 nights, right? So it's kind of like let's have a hub and kind of spoke out from there and then move to another hub. And on this vacation, we mostly stayed most places just one night. There was only twice we stayed in a place 2 nights just because of logistics, how it worked out. But it never felt like rushed. Like I was always like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Like I just have my suitcase. This is the only thing I have to worry about. I had my wheelie bag and I would just open it and I'd take out what I needed and I'd put it back in and then just close it up and away we went. And we had a car too, right? So we did a road trip similar to you. So it's also easier in that like unlike Europe or somewhere else where everything has to be packed in your bags, a lot of time like we left like our running shoes just in the car a lot of the time. So we'd like change. So if we went to a site where we were going to do a hike, we'd put on our running shoes, we come back to the car and we put our sandals back on for like the drive and then just like leave the running shoes in the car. So like there were some things where we didn't have to have them always packed because we could just sort of store them in the car
Sure.
in between going to places. So uh, yeah, I said to Dan though at one point, I was like, maybe because we've traveled so much with kids, now traveling without them just feels like a luxury and just so easy in comparison.
Well, that's really what it comes down to. Because even when we've traveled with like the other moms and stuff, and when you guys were all talking about packing like so many days ahead, I'm like, no, no, I'm not packing for like a bunch of days because I don't have to pack for myself. This is going to take me about an hour and then I am done.
Stuff in a bag, ready to go. Yeah. So you did a lot of locations. We did one single location, but we did do we tried to kind of exhaust it and do all the things. But so we did just Newfoundland. And I would say the highlights, which first of all, everyone should go to Newfoundland because it was awesome. It was super fantastic. I loved it. You were right, Steph. It is amazing. The people are like super friendly.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything negative to say. We also went during apparently the nicest weather they've had. Like literally tour operators would say to us, "This is the nicest weather we've had in 5 years." So we're like, "Oh, I'm glad this is when we showed up because this is just when our dates worked out." So it also helped probably like we were there for 8 days. We had rain one evening. It didn't impact any. We went for dinner. We were going to walk to dinner and we drove instead because it was raining. And by the next day, it was clear. and one morning it rained. And so instead of doing the hike we had planned, actually Dan and I both went for runs like separately. And then somehow he like met up with me on my route, even though I hadn't even told him I was going to go for a run. And I
Yeah.
hadn't even like thought of what my route was. So I'm like running along and then I'm like, oh, I know you. Cause it's like, why is this person so close to me? Oh, it's my husband. And then it cleared up in the afternoon. So it's like we kind of had a couple hours of rain the whole 8 days we were there, which I think for Newfoundland is kind of unheard of. We had a bit of fog, one or two of the days, but otherwise, yeah, it was great weather. So I'm sure that weather can
Oh,
make a big difference on a trip, right?
well, and that was the same thing. We lucked out with weather too, and that the only days that it really, really rained were driving days. So
Hmm.
any of the days when we were actually like doing stuff with the kids, it didn't really pour or anything like that. So it was good.
Yeah, makes a big difference. But yeah, so I'd say highlights for Newfoundland because we flew into the north and then drove across the island, made it to St. John's. We stopped in Grossmore National Park, which is a national park of Canada. And we did a bunch of hikes there and we did a boat tour through like basically they call it a pond, but it's basically like a fjord. And those were amazing. Like I would like if it works for your schedule, like I feel like it's so worth going to Grossmore National Park. It's just like, well, first of all, there's no reception in this park. Like like literally, except we did climb this one hill called the Lookout Hill Trail. We get to the top and Dan's like, oh, I have so many bars. So like at the like very, very top, we had some reception, but otherwise, like yeah, it's like so it kind of like allows you to be disconnected while you're out and about because you can't
Sure.
do anything. As I mentioned, I'm not signing up for any Disney races while I'm out and about because I have no reception. But then we, get into the places that we were staying, and then you'd get Wi-Fi. And so, yeah. So, anyways, make sure the places you stay have Wi-Fi as a big tip, since there's really no
No
connectivity.
reception.
No reception. Like we downloaded all of our maps, and I had already starred everywhere we were going to make sure like we would be able to get around. So we did a whale tour, which I booked because I wanted to see icebergs. There were no icebergs, Steph. No icebergs.
No, because it was so warm.
None to be seen. So that was upsetting. And like even the sign out front where it says like lists all the things you might see, they had like tape over the word icebergs because like they're
No
like, well, we can't even
icebergs.
advertise. So, and Dan was like, should we just cancel the tour and not go? And I'm like, well, we don't really have anything else planned. And like like where we were doing the tour, there wasn't like a whole bunch of other things we were going to do. So I'm like, we'll just go. At least, we'll see the island from the water. It's a beautiful day, whatever. So, but we did get to see two whales, and one of them, the tour guide was like, yeah, they're basically just waving at us. There's no other reason that they do this. So it was like rolling on its back and its fins were coming out of the water like this.
Oh,
And it
cool.
did it like a couple times. So anyways, I got it. And they said because of like we've done whale watching before, but we haven't gotten as close. And she said because there's only two tour companies we're in St. Anthony that do these tours, they don't really have like they're kind of allowed to get closer because there's like two boats in the water and there's like no other boats anywhere. So it's not
Sure.
like they're really, she said they just can't run the motor, but she's like, it's actually a problem because there's a couple whales that are actually really curious and friendly and they get like really close to the boat. And she's like, I'm not allowed to turn the motor on. So she just like, we just have to sit here and hope the whale like loses interest and like swims away and doesn't come any closer. So I was like, oh, that's hilarious. But it was cool because we got to see them really close. So, but again, whale watching is always so hit and miss, right? Because
Yeah.
they can't guarantee you're going to see whales. And if you don't see anything, then it's kind of like not a great experience. But it was disappointing that there were no icebergs, but I did get to see two whales. So
I
like
mean, and you got to see them up really close, so that's pretty
really close,
cool.
and they waved. It was so cute. Anyways, afterwards, she's pretty sure because the one whale we saw was actually quite little, so she actually thinks it was maybe a mother and a calf, like a 1-year-old calf.
Sure.
That's why they were both kind of close-ish to us because they were probably actually together. So that was really cool. The other thing we did that was awesome, which I mentioned to you on our pre-trip report, was we were going to go see Come From Away in Gander. So Come From Away
Hmm.
is the musical that's about 9/11 and all the planes that had to stop in Gander because the US airspace was closed and they got stranded there for like 3 days. So the population of Gander is like 6,000 people. And I think it was something like 7,000 passengers on these planes showed up one day and had to, anyways. So the musical was great. The theater was so tiny, like smaller than Center in the Square tiny.
Wow.
Yeah, but the performers were amazing. They did such a great job. I was so impressed because I saw the one in Toronto. So it's like I saw like kind of Broadway caliber performance before. And yeah, they like hit all the songs like perfectly. And anyways, and it was really interesting because the Newfoundland jokes that they built into the show, they hit hard in Gander, let me tell you. Like that audience was losing it to some of these jokes. Like it was like you could tell which ones were like very
Very newfie.
regional. Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
newfie. And then so then we were leaving. This is so random. I ran into an old coworker of mine in the lobby. So he's from Newfoundland, and I knew this when I worked with him. But I'm like, hey, how are you? So chatting with him, he was there with his parents who live just outside of Gander, and they made food for the plain people. They were part of this
Oh,
community. And so I'm chatting with his mom who like literally lived through this. It was like she was like, I was crying through all of it because like it was all
he
exactly how it
knew.
happened. She like lived it. She met these people who had come on these planes. She made chicken and rice for these people. Like, oh my goodness, it was just like the coolest sort of random encounter afterwards.
That is really cool.
And then they were headed to St. John's for the weekend. I'm like, well, that's where we're going to be this weekend. So anyways, we met up for them with them for drinks in St. John's and like
Yeah.
sat and listened to music. And anyway, so random and like completely,
That
yeah,
sounds like a total,
unexpected.
very like East Coast experience. Like, oh, met up with
Yes.
random people and then, oh, let's go hang out later and have drinks.
Like I literally know maybe three people who are from Newfoundland, him being one of them, and I ran into him in Newfoundland.
Yeah, exactly.
What are the chances?
But
So
that's
like that, yeah, that just added to the experience. Like I loved the play. Like it was so well done, and then that just like to actually get to talk to someone who kind of lived through it immediately after watching it, I was like, so cool. And then yeah, I'd
and how was
say
St. John's?
St. John's is great. We did the Screech In at Christian's Pub. It was quite the
Same place I've done
experience.
it too.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. We had talked to someone from Newfoundland, we were just, they're so friendly. So we're just chatting about what we were doing. And she had said, oh, if you're going to Christian's Pub, just make sure you get there early so you get a seat at the bar. Sit at the bar. That's where you want to be. So we're like, okay. So we got there like 30 minutes before and it was perfect. We got the last two seats at the bar. So we were sitting because she said the problem is like when we did it, there were 35 people getting screeched in, which is like their maximum that they can do. So
Hmm.
they have people sitting around the bar and everyone else just stands behind the people
Yeah.
sitting. So then you're standing for the full, like it was about 45-minute show, plus those people like were standing when they first got there. And anyway, so it's you'd stand for like a solid hour probably like getting there later. So we were really happy with that advice to get there early. And yeah, it was really fun. I kissed the cod. It
This is
happened.
what you have to do. You have to do it. You
Gotta
have
do
to
it.
down
Had
the
the
screech,
rum.
kiss the cod.
Yeah, did you have to have when we did it, he fried up some spam for us as well. We had to eat a hunk of spam,
I can't
which
remember.
she
I
called
don't think we did.
Newfoundland ham or steak or something
When
like that.
when we did it, we were in a unique situation though, because we were there for a wedding
Yeah,
and they essentially set it up at the bar that it was everyone at the bar getting screeched and was there for the wedding. There was like
right.
50 of us or something. So,
Yeah, so a bit different. But yeah, so that was really cool. And
mm,
like I said, we met up with them for drinks. Actually, what was funny is, and we didn't know this, but there was a festival. Well, there was two festivals going on in St. John's that weekend. So one was the George Street Festival, whereas they closed George Street to like they bring in bands and then but then you have to pay like a cover price to like get into George Street. So you can still get into Christian's Pub because I guess they do all these screech-ins. They like have to kind of, they know they have to let tourists in. Because initially we were like, are we gonna have to like pay to get into this like concert effectively? But no, they
Sure.
had it like sectioned off. So the one night we were there was like all Newfoundland bands. So we were kind of debating if we would go in, but then we went to the booth and said like, oh, how much is the ticket to get in? And it was like $65 just to get in to like for the music. But then I'm like, that's like, I don't know these bands. Like, I don't know. So it seemed really steep. And then that was the night we ended up meeting up with my coworker and his wife. And they were on George Street, but like a little further down. And so they had a table on the patio where you could see the live band that was still playing all Newfoundland music, like in the pub, who were fantastic. And so we sat there and had drinks and anyways, it was a delightful night.
That
But
sounds lovely.
I was almost like a little like disappointed there was this festival because I'm like, I kind of just wanted to experience George Street like the way it would
It
have been.
Yeah,
So
it is fun. It's fun just to wander and walk. Like I was 35 weeks pregnant when we were
yeah,
there. So we only stayed in St. John's and I did wander through George Street, but I didn't get to like partake in anything. But it was fun to people watch and see all the
yeah.
things.
Well, and during the festival, I guess one of the neat things is that because they close the street, the whole street is licensed. So you can get a drink in one bar and you can actually take your drink with you and like wander and like go. So they have like a stage set up and that's where their
Yeah,
performers
see, that's
are.
really cool.
But the one thing that they said, we were talking to some people who had gone, they were at the Screech Inn with us and they had gone to the George Street Festival the night before. And they said the only thing that was weird is like when the performers were on the stage, it was great. There was live music. But when they would take a break, so they'd take like a 30-minute set break or whatever it was, they said there was no music at all, like on the
Oh,
street. So like that was kind of weird, like
that's
to just like
weird.
have no music. Whereas because most of the time in bars, like there's at least like music playing, even if it's not live. So, and then there was a busker festival going on at, on Water Street, which is like the street that parallels George Street. So we saw a couple of buskers here and there, but they had like, I don't know, they had like three different locations that weren't super close to one another. And so the one on Water Street didn't always have someone performing there, which I don't know, it seemed really weird to me. I'm like, why wouldn't you just always have someone performing at this like very central location? Whereas like, so you'd go there and there'd be someone there for an hour, and then the next hour, so they'd be at a completely different location. I don't know.
Yeah,
It seemed like a really weird setup. So we didn't catch too much of it just because you kind of would have had to travel around the city to see them all.
sure.
Um, but uh, but yeah, that was really cool. And then just music was everywhere. Like we went out to dinner one night in Bonavista and is like just like a local guy showed up, played his guitar. It was great. We knew like most of the songs, and then like everyone in the bar knew all of the songs and we're singing
Mm.
along. And it's just like it's just part of the culture that I thought was so cool. And I'm like, yeah, like it's just such an enjoyable evening and singing along. And
Yep.
he took some requests. There was this little girl, she was like 4 years old, and she made a request for this like very traditional Newfoundland song. And then she stood up there and sang it along with him.
Oh, so cute.
And you could tell there were certain parts she knew really well because she was really loud in those parts, and then other parts she didn't know as well. So she was a little quieter. But like, anyways,
That's
just like
very
things like that
cute.
that you can't plan out and they just sort of
No.
happen spontaneously in your trip. And I said to Dan, I'm like, I don't know if it's just because like we're more relaxed because like we don't have the kids and we're just sort of like, we can just kind of do whatever and go with the flow. And but yeah, it just seemed like a really easy trip and didn't really have any snags, no weather issues. There's a few times we kind of switched around our schedule just based on what worked better for us. But yeah, for the most part, it was delightful.
Sounds
Delightful.
lovely.
I recommend
Lovely.
highly not traveling with your children.
Why do you think we do most of these Disney trips without them?
I know, I know. And our next Disney trip is coming up very soon, Steph.
I know. It's hard to believe. Less than a month.
Mhm. I know. Yeah, I keep forgetting that, like, because it's so early in September, I keep forgetting it's like, oh, like just like a couple weeks away and we're going to be
Yeah.
on this next trip. So our next episode will be a pre-trip report and we'll talk about all the things
Mm-hmm.
that we are planning to do. Although this pre-trip report is going to be interesting because with Disneyland, it's not, you don't really plan it out as much, I find, as you do
Because
Disney World.
you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it leads more to more spontaneity and just like, what do we feel like doing now? And let's do this other thing. Whereas, yeah, Disney World definitely is a lot more scheduled, which pros and cons to both, right? So
Sure. Although by our next trip, we'll be there for so long that we don't even have to really worry about that as much, I feel.
I know, yeah, I know. Then when we do our January trip, we just booked our flights last night, and I said to Steph, "Oh my goodness, we're going to be there for like 6 days. Like that feels like an eternity because usually it's a quick long
In
weekend.
and
We're in, we're
out.
out.
Yeah.
But
So
when you're doing 4 races, Steph,
I know you have to be there so far ahead and then you have to not die somewhere in a corner afterwards.
yep, I'll have to drag you home on the well, that was the debate, right? When we were booking our flights,
Yeah.
it was, well, do we take the late Sunday night flight after you have run 4 races and probably won't be able to walk, or do we just give you one more night of sleep and just fly out the next morning? So we opted for the what
One
one
more
more
night.
night to at least that way if Steph can't walk, she has a hotel room to crash in and maybe sleep and recover. Or who knows, maybe you'll be just good
Just
and
dandy. We'll see.
maybe you'll stretch after your half marathon.
Maybe I'll follow my own advice and stretch. Maybe.
Maybe we'll see. Stay tuned. But yeah, so until our next episode, I think that about wraps it up for us today. So until next time.
Tweedle out.